That's that's
Because the other way is not true. Uh, Dennis, my buddy man, how are you doing on this happy hour?
well. It's happy. We are in the midst of a sizable amount of snow, I suppose, by many people's standards. Not Buffalo like snow, but for Kalamazoo, it's probably about 8 inches today.
Wow.
So
For
slushy roads and shoveling the sidewalk twice. But
nice.
I did my doing my never to be called handyman um, job at my friend, my new buddy Steve's house, who needed a new desk work station, and had in his back room as a laundry table of all things with folding legs underneath it, a a 7 foot plus tabletop that he made of plywood with oak veneer over the top of it, and he had used these little pegs to hold it down together. It's kind of attractive. The little pegs, nice stained oak. And he said, I want that folding table turned into my work table. And I looked at his work area, and he had an old antique desk, a small dark wood one, squarely built, missing the drawer, and all of the pieces looked like they were dropping. Gravity was pulling them, and it was real rickety. And because it was the wrong height, he had it up on 4 plastic pots.
4 plastic pots.
Yes, and then he had a couple tables next to him, and he had two monitors and a bunch of stuff, a microphone. He had tables and stuff. So I said, I can see why you want in that bay window like area where your desk is to completely fill it with a 7-foot table that's notched, that goes back.
Yep.
And then meets the front of the wall. And so that's what I've been working on. And I got it mostly finished yesterday, and took me 6 hours. Take the legs off, build new legs, and figure out how to make it
Re-legged.
4 feet longer and 2 feet longer on each side, so that it completely filled the open space instead of had a little 2-foot gap at the end that could have been, will be filled.
But the tabletop itself is one piece of wood, and
Yes.
you've added
Wings.
either onto both sides wings. Okay.
Wings. And in order to do the wings, I didn't want the wings. This is cool. I didn't want the wings to have any legs.
Whoa.
And so I mounted underneath the tabletop 2x4s running thin side up, so that their tensile strength is enormous.
Inside up?
Instead of flat side, wide side, the 2-inch part of the 2x4 is against the tabletop.
Okay.
So it's to keep the tabletop from bending.
Yeah. I understand.
Among other things, and to secure it. So all I did was add to those 6-foot, supports, 2 more supports that went 2 feet too long. And so it's like a skeleton with 2 prongs waiting for the board to be dropped on it. Legs. And found wood to pretty much match.
It's amazing what you can do with 2x4s and 4x4s and stuff.
Yeah. I made a nice design. It works pretty well. It's on wheels. Very easy to move out. Wedges in between a bay window. You know what a bay window is, right? The recessed.
Yeah.
And then the bay window area is also recessed. So it's like a double recess. So I'm filling all that with a tabletop. It's going to look good. Staining it, cedar legs, cedar trim, oak.
Very nice.
Cedar's great to work with.
The extent of my carpentry experience was my freshman year of college. I I was going. I roomed. My roommate was a friend of mine from high school, who he and I had spent a lot of time goofing around in high school in his like workshop area with his like we were sawing wood and doing weird things. I don't know.
Right. Building stuff.
And so we went and we looked at we measured the exact dimensions of our dorm room. That was, you know how dorm rooms are. They're
Yeah.
all like, dang it, what's the word? Cinder block.
Yeah.
Crap.
Right. Nondescript.
With paint, yeah. And so we measured the exact dimensions, and we built in his driveway back home, way far away from school. We built this structure so that our beds would be elevated, but there wouldn't be any. All of the legs of the structure were against the walls, and the corners of the beds that weren't against the wall would be supported by something by a bar going across the top. And we engineered the shit out of this thing, and then we somehow transported it to the university, and when we installed this thing, and it was amazing. Like, we had this thing where our mattresses were elevated off of the floor, and we put like sofas and stuff underneath, and it freed all of the floor space underneath.
You created a 2-story structure.
Right. It was like a loft in this tiny little room. But I remember the joy of the engineering and the work and the reward and the payoff of having this thing being built and installed. And then we lived in this room where we had more floor space, and like we just made the space better.
Twice as big.
Yeah. And in the end, we didn't really work out as roommates for a variety of reasons.
Mostly because of your habits.
Yeah.
Your snoring, for example.
I have to attribute all of the blame to myself. But I think he dropped out of college after the first year, and then I had a different roommate that was another friend of mine from
Slacker.
Yeah. So, but I remember the just the possibility of having a saw and some 2x4s and some 4x4s, and what you can, like, the potential of what you can build is pretty much infinite. It's just up to your imagination. So I appreciate that you get to work with that. And
it's nice, like we talked about before, where in like social service jobs and other kinds of jobs I've had, where it's a never-ending problem. I mean, if your goal is to have world peace,
right.
You're constantly striving. But if your goal is to build a desk,
exactly, there's a
point soon you're going to look at it and say, "Wow, I met that goal. What's next?"
Right. Having a well-defined success is so crucial to feeling good about your work, because if you're right, like if your goal is world peace and you're like, well, we worked really, really hard, and now there were 2% fewer murders this year. It's like, does that feel like success? But if you can like point to a thing and be like, I built that,
Yeah.
and now it's done.
Done.
And now give me another project. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and this dude's a horn player, so that's how I met him. He's a trumpet cornet player who plays blues occasionally.
Does he use his nose horn?
Huh?
Does he use his nose horn?
I wonder where my baby went. She ain't home today. I wonder where my baby's gonna stay. Well, so it's good here in Kalamazoo. I mean, I got a interesting thing happened the other day where, well, some good news, lots of good news. One is that Tab Benoit is coming to Kalamazoo State Theater
Again.
February 23rd. And we have 3 tickets. My sister-in-law is joining us. It's Nikki's birthday on the day before.
22323.
2 and last year was what? 222.
22.
And 222. And afterwards, he's playing at the Old Dog for an after party with my friend Tony T-Bone, the sax player.
Yeah.
And so that's great news. And as I was kind of planning that out with my wife, she said, so are you going to go see your brother? Did you say something about going to see your brother in State College?
Uh-huh.
And I didn't think I had. And I said, well, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. So I'm going to head that way. But at one point I said to him, hey, there's a rumor afoot that there'll be a classic in Myrtle Beach. And maybe we'll repeat what we did last year. We'll do a road trip. Go to Danny's. I got the key to Danny's place. Do a little surf fishing in the winter. And maybe catch one and then head down and he'll cook. But it was such a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this, and I know that the committee itself is listening, so he'll understand this, is that it's clear that his hand is not involved. It's clear that the vice president, as per the president's directions last year, that he no longer was going to organize. He's letting Jeff do it. He's not written a word. That's because he's letting Jeff do it. And the first thing that Jeff did was pick a date that couldn't stick. So I think you and I, both of us, I want a letter of authenticity that he has somehow gotten the nod from the president to do this work, because it's already clear that he doesn't have the skill level.
So it sounds like mutiny.
Yeah, it's not mutinous. It's more like taking advantage of a situation. And he got it. He asked the question, "Are you interested?" And the answer is yes. Of course, I'm interested.
Right.
He didn't ask the question, "Will you come?"
Indeed.
Which he's asked me before on numerous occasions. And so John left me a message. I haven't called him back yet. Hey, man, looks like we're playing golf, man. It's like, well, no, I don't. It's going to cost me $700 to get a plane ticket with a week's notice, and I might drive. So I left my brother the message, what about this, and talked with him a minute about it. So he's thinking of it now. Of course, it's been delayed till perhaps March. Here's my point here is that
March, really?
Yes. So I think
March is much more doable.
Well,
on my side.
This is my point. I think that you should suggest that if it's after a certain date, then you can do it. And because having you go is a huge attraction for me and for others, for your family, certainly. So that's one thing. Even though if it's the later it is, thinking that I might be heavily contracted or employed soon, I might not be able to go. Whereas right now, I don't have any commitments, and it's impossible to think that I'd be committed out anytime in February. March is another story.
What an interesting opposite situation we find ourselves in, where I am employed, which makes it hard for me to go, and you are worried and like, because I just started my job.
Right. And I'll soon be in the same position you are now, which is I can't take a week off after I've just got this contract.
Right, exactly. In the same way that
Right.
that I should not.
Well, so a little local news.
Give me some local news.
I want to read to you an article in January 2023 from the local news rag Spark, which is like a good news little newspaper that goes around. It's called Michigan's Own Grace Gilbert, the Bearded Lady. And I will summarize this by saying that Grace became a big circus attraction and traveled the world. And she is from nearby Kalkaska, Michigan. Now, it's an interesting story.
I'm riveted already.
That the Bearded Lady is from Michigan, and I'm going to hold this picture up, not because our many listeners can hear it, but I want you to see that face.
That looks like an Indian gentleman.
Now, in the show notes...
This hold on. I just want to say that our Patreon subscribers at the Gin Martini level will be able to see this video and will have seen that. So give an extra. Oh yeah, there she is.
Now, what I'm going to send you.
And you're telling me that's not an Indian gentleman?
No, it's a woman. Her name is Grace Gilbert. She's the Bearded Lady.
Okay.
She worked for the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circuses, and she grew up here, right up the street from the person who was interviewed. While in Kalkaska, Michigan, Grace wore a veil, as many pregnant women at the time believed their babies could be marked should the mother be traumatized by seeing a person such as Grace. So while she was pregnant, she wore a veil. She didn't want to scare anybody. But here's the whole point of the story.
Well,
this is an identical picture of the bass player from Out of Favor Boys. Tony's bass player, this is him. I'm going to show you a picture of him. And when you see it, and well, I'll be able to show you. Maybe I can get this to you too, or send you the article. It's uncanny. It's uncanny. It's a Doppelganger.
Oh, we are speaking German now.
Doppelganger.
That's good. So, how many bearded ladies in the past were really trans women, do you think? People that identified as women, but
were really men,
but had masculine genetics.
Well, I don't know, but in the case of Grace Gilbert, obviously she became pregnant, so she was not trans. But your question wasn't about her. Your question was in general. That's a good question. I don't know. I suspect that it's a reasonable number. And
also just I wonder about the genetic mutation that cause, like, how many women suffer because of our modern standards of beauty, suffer from having a lot of facial hair that they have to like maintain.
Right. Get rid of
one wonders. And now that you can't just like go to the local circus and be like, employ me. Yeah,
Right.
one wonders. It
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You keep saying that. You wonder. It's not. You're not one wonders. You're speaking of yourself in the third person. It's like one wonders. You might as well be saying Eric wonders.
one does not know what you're talking about.
Eric wonders.
No,
You're funny.
I was just who knows? That thought had never occurred to me until just now, and maybe it's
Which thought?
horribly offensive.
Which thought?
One's thoughts.
You're funny.
So
a couple things. One is the second episode of Your Honor came out.
Seen it. Took
And
notes.
I'd like to talk about it a little bit because there are some understandings of the timeline.
I took notes
Also,
for this conversation, which is
new
super
series, The Last of Us. Is that the name of it?
That's the one that you said that you liked.
And the second one is even better. And I am way hooked. Although I will tell you this, to begin the discussion with Your Honor, I am beginning to be a bit intrigued. And the acting, of course, is pretty good. But as I begin to piece it together, some of the logistical issues and the time issues I mentioned earlier.
Wait, you're talking about Your Honor, not the last.
Your Honor. All I'm saying is, I'm sorry, I changed subjects too quickly for you to be able to. I didn't turn on my signal.
Okay.
Anyway, the second episode of The Last of Us is better, so I'm hooked. New subject.
Hold on. You're talking about the second to Last of Us?
The second episode, I just saw it.
Okay. Not The Last of Us, the second to Last of Us. Okay.
Very clever.
Sorry.
Very
Continue.
clever. And only to further confuse people.
That's my main. This is my main
I'm sure that's
role here.
Or a listener.
That's my main role here.
So, but back to Your Honor. What we discovered this episode is that he was in actual prison for a year, and we now know for certain that DOJ agent Rosie Perez, whoever she is in the show. She got him out as a DOJ agent can to turn state's witness. And this is what I managed to piece together about the logistics that serves to make my comfort level enough that I'm not so disgusted with just the idiocy of it.
Oh, good on them.
Unknowns to us.
They must have read your comment.
They could have. He very likely pled guilty to a charge of obstructing justice or aberration of justice or whatever. And he might have actually been first found guilty through a judge's tribunal of some kind. The judges are kind of, dealing with their own. And then with that finding of responsibility by them, that it was referred over to the district attorney for in this case Orleans Parish, and the district attorney was understanding that he was pleading guilty, and so the headlines would read, Judge Desiato, I think whatever his name is,
Desiato
pleads guilty and sentenced to 7 to 10 years in prison. And it could be as part of the agreement that because it was a judicial review and a recommendation and a guilty plea, not much was known publicly about the case, but that is the situation. And it's not actually related to the death of his son. The death of his son, Adam, created such a despair in him that when it was that I think that he might have just announced that he was crooked and whatever, or I don't
Right.
know how it was exactly found out. But then he goes to prison for a year, and now the way he looks makes sense. You had said it's a 3-month beard, and it's not. It's more like a 6 or 9-month beard. And of course, the child, Adam's child, his grandson, whom he meets as the closing scene,
Which was shown on the previously on as if
yes,
to nudge
well,
me as like, hey, do you remember there was a kid?
which you somehow missed. You were
Yeah.
probably snoozing or whatever you do when something is on television at night.
Yes.
And that's 9 months pregnancy and 3-month-old baby. That's 12 months. So that cleared that up.
You math good.
Now, the other thing that I raised has to do with the fact that the U.S. Department of Justice Assistant Attorney General has got these tapes and is saying to the authorities, I'm going to get this guy out, and she is visiting him, and she is playing tapes of his admissions,
Right.
none of which were necessarily made public because all the public knew was that he pled guilty and he got time. And there's a box full of shit. And it could have been something that Michael's mother-in-law, the legislator, who he's ended up living with,
That's his mother-in-law. Okay.
it's who he's living with now.
Yeah.
Bedding in the pantry for reasons that I'm still not put together. I think maybe that's where, I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's you hear stories of people coming back from prison and not being comfortable in a comfortable bed,
and that makes sense after a year.
And like, I need to sleep on the floor. Yeah.
So much sense after 3 months. And but here's the point of that, not the tangent, is this, that he might have said, in order to avoid embarrassment and to hit and hurt his family name, particularly his mother-in-law, that the records would be sealed. That there was really no reason. There was no reason he pled guilty. He got time. For there to be a whole lot of publicity about it. There wasn't a trial. There was nothing public. There wasn't even a hearing. There might have been a hearing where he pled guilty, got sentenced. That's it. He didn't question the facts, etc. They had a general description of the crime, which was that he sentenced somebody as part of a deal. So he took a bribe, and that's it. When you put it all together that way, now it can make some sense that the assistant attorney general plays the tape and says, we don't want this to get out.
Right.
That he's a snitch, because the only thing that Michael knows about the judge is that Michael was connected to the death of his son. Michael knew that. And that's why his wife, forced the judge to make certain that her son, Carlos, didn't go to prison for murdering people. So Michael knows all that. And so when you see in the second episode, Michael's out of prison, one of the things that you could hear from Michael to the judge is, you're a stand-up guy.
Right.
You kept this thing between us, blah, blah, blah. And the other person that's in the same situation is Charlie, who is mayor, foolishly let the judge convince him to get rid of the car.
Right.
Which he ends up describing as far as the deaths go in this whole tragic episode, is a coffin with headlights. That's how serious that is.
Nice.
So Michael's a stand-up guy for Charlie. He's a stand-up guy for Michael. What's the judge's first name?
The judge's first name is Michael. You've been using Michael all the time.
But what's the gangster's first name? That's who I was referring to as Michael.
Jimmy.
Well, then you got to. Did you follow me though? Did you know I was Talking about Jimmy?
I
That
thought
Jimmy would
so.
say to Michael,
I
"You're a
was confused.
stand-up guy," because Jimmy
Yes.
knew
Yes.
that he was involved. He's covered up the sons.
Jimmy Baxter,
Jimmy Baxter.
played by a guy named Michael.
There
If
you
we
go.
want to talk about
So
Michael and Brian, we can do
right,
actors' names if you want.
right.
Pretend like
So
that's what you were going for
so
all along.
he knows the judge. Covered up for his son. He's a stand-up guy for that reason. When he got caught by Jimmy Baxter, he didn't turn Jimmy Baxter in. Charlie knows the same thing. He doesn't have to worry about it. It's only three people. His supporter, who's his bodyguard guy, I guess, who will never tell, and then Michael and him. So he thinks. We know, of course, because we've heard the tape, that Michael, just because he was despondent and suicidal,
Right?
turned on everybody, hoping that it might increase his chances of death, which is what every decision he made since his son's death was, to put him in harm's way and jeopardy, to the point of maybe it would kill him. Maybe someone will kill me in prison. And of course, if he wanted somebody to kill him in prison, he could have got somebody to kill him.
Yeah, we talked about this.
We also don't know, and would be interesting to know about the backstory. He pled guilty. He was fine. He lost his house. Or did his mother-in-law move into it?
Yeah. A couple of thoughts. First of all, the mayor has an impeccable sense of style. Like, I want to wear the mayor, Charlie.
What about him?
That he has a great sense of style. Like, I want to wear a suit and a fedora, like the way he does.
Well, he's mayor of New Orleans. He's quite the character.
Exactly. And I love the name End Cut Meat Company.
And cut meat company, yeah.
Yeah, like he goes to work for this butcher place. That was amazing.
Well, and the reminder that otherwise Michael was a good judge, because the manager of the meat market had been sentenced. And here's something quizzical: is he says to the judge, he says, "A jury found me guilty and sentenced me to 45 years in prison. And you reversed that and gave me 90 days in jail and said that good people don't deserve to be in prison."
Exactly.
And it was sort of like that's why he was giving him a job, whatever.
Right.
Plus the fact that he was doing the attorney general.
Those numbers are not correct, but the sentiment is, yes.
Well, and the thing is Michael was a felony court judge, and a felony court judge, in no legal sense that I know of, can take someone's resultant verdict and sentence by jury and somehow reverse it, unless he's at the appellate level. So the jury finds him guilty and gives him 45 years.
Big words.
He appeals it and says, "I'm going to a higher court." And then when he goes to the higher court says, "We looked at what this jury said and found it's cruel and unusual punishment." And so if Michael was an appeals court judge, but he's not. So that's a hole that probably is not important, to 99% of the viewers. And I don't think I'm wrong about it. But at the same time, Louisiana law is pretty quirky. It only takes 10 people in a jury in Louisiana, by the way, to be convicted of a death sentence. 2 people of the 12 can say, no way, I'm totally positive he did not do it. And another person says, yeah, I agree with you, there's no way. 10's good enough. Whereas in most states in the country, of course, it's 12.
2 questions.
Number 1.
You said appellate as opposed to appellate.
Yeah.
I've always heard it called the appellate court.
Well, good for you. Next question.
But you call it the appellate court because maybe they have
sure
fruit
it's
there.
Pronounced both ways. What else you got?
Okay.
Same court, appeals court,
Yes.
to be clear.
Yeah. I mean, it's appealing to. So, jury nullification is a thing
An
where
override.
where the jury can say yes, he's guilty, but he doesn't deserve this sentence or whatever. Is that a thing that you've seen exercised?
Yeah, sure. A jury can say he's convicted, but because of extenuating circumstances, some of which are clear in the sentencing guideline score.
But it's my understanding that if you are if you're being interviewed for jury duty and you express that you understand about jury nullification, that they're going to kick you out.
Yeah, I suppose that the prosecutor would kick out. I've never served because of my jobs and what it's clear that I believe in. If the guy in the butcher shop had said, the jury found me guilty and recommended a 45-year sentence, and you gave me 90 days, then it would be accurate. But the jury did not give him 45 days. The judge says, how do you find the defendant? And the answer is guilty. And they say, do you have a sentencing recommendation within the guidelines of the case, blah, blah, blah. Yes, we do, Your Honor. What is it? We recommend that the defendant receive 45 years in prison. And the judge ends it that day. It says sentencing will be after our recess. And then comes back and says, I've studied this and blah, blah. I cannot agree with the jury's recommendation. I believe that this is a man who is, up until this point in time, has only been convicted of petty crimes. This will essentially end his life. He does not deserve life in prison. At the age of 45, I sentence him to 90 days and a period
45.
of 5-year supervised probation following his sentence. And during that time, he shall hold the job and shall not be convicted as much of crossing the street wrong. Clam the hammer down. That's what happened.
Clam the hammer down.
Clam the hammer down. Clamor the hammer.
That's what I always
What's
say.
that noise? Someone would say, and out in the hallway they say, sounds like hammer clamor.
Hammer clamor in the corner.
And then the bailiff, who happens to be a woman, opens the door and says, quiet down out there. And he looks at him, the guy looks at him, looks at the other guy, and he says, hammer, clamor, damn her.
Wow. I was wondering where that was going. And you delivered.
And then he reaches in his coat pocket and he pulls out some candy, multiple kinds of candy, and he says, sampler? That would be hammer, clamor, damn her. Sampler?
If he'd been receiving a bunch of emails, he could have been a spammer as well. Yes.
And he actually said, now that you say it, thank you.
Did I stammer when I clamor the hammer? Yes. Okay.
After the hammer, clamor, damn her.
But I'm stammer.
The sampler.
Okay.
Period. He stammered.
All right.
It's a short story, man. I've been reading a book of the best Western short stories ever written. A compilation.
Western as in
Western.
Western.
Wild West.
Okay. Wild West.
Wild
okay.
West. Gunslinging, cow poking.
Gunslinging, cow poking.
Cow poking.
That's what is cow poking?
Well,
I mean,
there's
I got a
young
finger.
cowboy who lives on the range.
Yep.
His horse and his cattle are his only companions. He works in the saddle and he sleeps in the canyons, waiting for summer, his pastures to change. And as the moon rises, he sits by the fire, thinking about women and glasses of beer. He closes his eyes as the doggies retire, and he sings out a song which is soft but is clear, as if maybe someone will hear. So
James.
good night, you moonlight ladies. Rockabye,
Rockabye,
sweet
sweet
baby
baby
James.
James.
Sweet greens and blues are the colors I choose. Won't you let me go down in my dreams and rockabye, sweet baby James? Meow, meow, meow. Cowpoking is what happens when you get up in the morning and put out your campfire and get out and get on your horse and say, let's go, cows. Don't be pokey. We got a long ways to go before we get to Montana,
All
or
right.
before we get to St. Louis from Montana. They're on their way to kill them beefs. Kill them beefs and herd them in there. Ride them. You know.
I know.
Rolling. Keep them doggies rolling. Keep them doggies moving. Ride.
Indeed.
What's the best version of that ever recorded on live film? Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi,
Yes.
the Blues Brothers.
The Blues Brothers. Yes.
John Belushi pulls out a whip. In his whip, there happens to be one hanging on the side of the bar. Dan Aykroyd.
So a podcast that I listen to sometimes when I'm out of other podcasts that I prefer is this one by David Spade and Dana Carvey, where they talk about SNL and just like all their stories about the crazy shit that happens at Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And
how long were they there?
Like one of them was there for 4 years, and then the one was there for like 9 years or something like that.
That's a lot of stories, isn't it?
But they have on as guests other SNL people, and either other cast members or people that were just like there as hosts or writers. And they recently did a like 2 or 3 part series where it was all about Chris Farley. Like they did a memoriam about Chris Farley, and they talked to Chris Farley's mother and brother, but also a bunch of other people that had ever like worked with him, and it was really clear that that Chris idolized Belushi in a way. The SNL guy was John Belushi. His brother's Jim. They also talked to Jim Belushi, but he idolized John Belushi, and wanted to be him in the big guy physical comedy space. And like one time he found he found a pair of pants in the SNL like wardrobe thing that like had Belushi's name on them, and he loved to wear those, and he would wear those like under his other clothes when he was performing, because like he wanted, like he felt John Belushi, like he wanted to be John Belushi so bad.
Right. Well,
and they both died for the same reason at age 33. and like people were like warning him the entire time, like they had Kevin Nealon on and those people, and they talked about how everyone told Chris, it's like, look, John Belushi was amazing. You're amazing. In fact, you're probably even better than him in so many ways. Don't follow that path. And they weren't able to stop that. But it just, I love those stories of behind the scenes of the entertainment stuff that I grew up watching. Super interesting.
Speaking of Belushi and the stories, is that there's a often seen song with Joe Cocker, and Belushi is imitating Joe Cocker, and Joe Cocker had never seen it before, and the look on Joe Cocker's face when he was watching Belushi imitating with his chest out and his fingers flayed open and his arms back like a bird about to crow, standing on his tiptoes, spinning around. And at the end of the song, when they're doing this duet, Belushi ends up falling down on the ground and doing the squirming, twitching thing that he was doing, standing up and continuing to sing. And the look on Joe Cocker's face is worth. You've seen this. Have you seen it?
I have not, but I have just looked it up, and it will be in the show notes at happyhour.fm/173. It's from Saturday night, October 2nd, 1976.
Ooh-wee, that's a while ago. Joe Cocker, did he recently die? Or no? No.
No. Who we're currently mourning is a fellow that looks a little bit like yourself. Joe Cocker died in 2014.
Oh, dear. Leon Russell?
Leon Russell what?
Who are we mourning who I look like?
Crosby.
Oh, David Crosby. Yeah. Got an interesting story about David Crosby is that when I lived down in Tampa, Florida.
You have a Crosby story.
Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young were playing at the local university, Tampa, University of Florida. And me and my buddy scored a couple of tickets. And when we got there, we thought we were in the wrong place because there were hardly any cars there. And we went into the building and went to the gym, even though we were pretty close on time. We weren't particularly early. There were hardly any people there. And as it got closer to the show playing, and I don't recall there was any warm-up band, it was Crosby, Stills, Nash. No Young, I don't think, at that time. And there were so few people there that it was in like a gymnasium. And so they had the stage set up at one end, and then the open floor, which was the basketball court size.
Right.
Or bigger. I mean, it was bigger than that. But the point is, there was nobody in the seats. There were seats all in the back, and there was what essentially would be a huge dance floor. And there were so few people that there was a half moon of people. You could take 10 steps back and you'd be out of the crowd.
Right.
These guys played their freaking hearts out. And there were so few people there. And I was so enthralled. I was standing in front. I was the first person with my hand on the stage. I was that close.
Yep.
And David Crosby and I locked eyes, and he enjoyed me enjoying the music. And he smiled and he laughed, and I smiled and I laughed. And I'll never forget that moment.
How beautiful.
I ended up writing about it in a letter that my father got a hold of. And it was pretty clear in the letter I wrote to David Crosby that there were reasons for my being mesmerized. I never mailed it. Apparently, my father found it laying in one of my boxes somewhere and read it.
That's funny.
I went to my brother and said, "What's up with your little brother?"
Yeah. From all accounts I've heard, David Crosby should have been gone long ago.
Oh,
The fact that he survived this many years.
Yes.
Is,
well, he had a liver transplant, which was
right, and all the substance abuse and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, and he was quite. There was one article that I read that I meant to send you, but then I lost it. I think it was in the Atlantic. It might have been in Vanity Fair, but it was the most honest appraisal of him, of his skill and his difficulty, and said it was well known that he was a loudmouth and would never worry about whether he was hurting people's feelings when he said things, whatever, and then would beg forgiveness. And notwithstanding this, and it was good to read, because in Crosby's later years, when he dissed Neil Young's wife, Daryl Hannah, when he said that he thought that Graham Nash's biography was a bunch of whiny bitching, and this and that and the other, and it was like my feelings for him changed immensely. I thought, you sing good, but you're kind of a prick. And
right.
Of course, looking at his past, I kind of should have known that. But nonetheless, I went to see him in concert just a few years ago. He was here in Kalamazoo.
Oh, really?
And he had put together this young band. And the young band were multi.
Not to be confused with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. It's a different young band.
Young band.
Yeah.
And what they did was they went into his recordings from his sound studio. He always had access to a sound studio. When he'd get an idea, as he would say after he smoked a joint, he would go to the studio and play a couple of riffs of something that he was thinking about. And he might or may not finish it, but that's how he wrote music.
Right.
They went into his vault, so to speak, the bunch of them, found riffs they particularly liked, and then the four of them wrote music around those riffs.
Interesting.
And it was wonderful how these other musicians, and he was a true collaborator. He had a similar album that he said this, quoted, is that I didn't want these people to be singing with David Crosby. I wanted the four of us to put out music. And that's what they were doing. And it was the best of them. It was his higher self, as they say.
Right. How interesting to put together a couple little licks here and there, being inspired by substances, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then have, because maybe what you put down is garbage and maybe it isn't, but how amazing is it to be at the level where then you can have professional musicians come, I can grab the guitar and be like, and but how amazing would it be to have other musicians come and be like, okay, so how can assuming that this doobie 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 doo is genius, how can we extrapolate this into actual music, which is wow.
What? Well, I came across a child of God. He was walking along the road, and I asked him, tell me, where are you going? And this he told me.
What did he tell you?
He said, I'm going down to Yasgur's farm. We're going to join in a rock and roll band. I'm going to get back to the land and set my soul free. We are Gardust. We are Gardust. We are Gardust.
Gardust.
Roll 'em, roll 'em, roll 'em.
Gardust.
I've gotta close the column. Remember the bearded lady, roll on. Her
Gardust.
name was Grace Gilbert. I'll never forget her. That doesn't rhyme, but I don't care. Grace Gilbert. So, man, see you next week, buddy. Gotta blow, gotta blow, gotta blow.
So between now and next week, I'm going to go to London briefly
Oh.
because my new job wants to like meet me in
Well,
person.
we didn't talk about your new job. That'd be a good
I'm
dedicated.
gonna have a lot of stuff to talk about next time.
So your homework is to watch 2 episodes of The Last of Us.
All right, and also to travel to London and back.
Yeah, right. Whatever.
Whatever.
I mean,
Whatever. You know.
Across the pond.
Yeah. It's a...
See you, man.
All right. Love you.
Bye.
Later, bro. Okay, that's it for episode number 173. You can find the show notes at happyhour.fm/173. There's a link to a jury nullification video that's very interesting, as well as more information about Grace Gilbert. You can help support the show at patreon.com/happyhour. If you support at the Gin Martinis level, you can watch a video of us doing this crazy crap. See you next week.